Hello and welcome to Spotlight Indie. I'm your host, Frasier Armitage, part-time robot, full-time nerd, and joining me as co-host is the mighty Alex S. Bradshaw. Alex, are you well?
Yes, I'm feeling well and mighty today, which is good because that's how you describe me. So we're at the same page.
Perfect. Already in sync. That's
exactly.
great.
Yeah.
In sync with your mightiness is what we are.
Yeah.
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 And joining us is the incredible author and editor-in-chief of ASAP Imagination, is Laurie Cunningham. Hello, Laurie. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm good. Surviving.
You are also mighty, Laurie.
Also mighty. For some reason, that reminds me of, I think it's the night at the museum. It's like, we may be small, but our hearts are mighty. I think that's that movie.
Yeah.
Random reference for you there.
That describes like the plight of all indie creatives.
Yeah.
It's like, I love it.
Literally, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. So we are here to prove that there's no such thing as a stupid question. And so every time that we get together and we record these kinds of videos, we are trying to help out people who are new writers, who maybe when you were a new writer, you had lots and lots of different questions, and some of them seemed really, really silly. Some of them seemed really, really big. This is just a forum where we can address all of those questions. So we've had a question from a viewer, and over the past two of these episodes, one with Anna Mossycat, one with Olivia J. Elliott, we were talking about book launches and what it takes to launch a book. So we've talked about marketing, we've talked about what to do when you finish writing, and this week we're going to talk about how to find where your book fits in terms with other books and with other genres and things like that. So this will be the final part of this book launch series that we've done. So thank you for joining us, Laurie, and thank you for joining us, Alex, because then we get to enjoy your wisdom and your pearls of these kinds of things. So let's start with genre. How important is it to understand the genre that you're writing in, do you think? Let's throw it over to you, Laurie. What do you think?
So I write dark stuff and like edging on horror and stuff. So I think, unfortunately, as much as you'd like to pretend that you're not a genre, because you're like, my book's for everyone. A lot of people don't like horror. So I know, and I do a lot of my sales at Comic Cons and in person. And one of the first things I ask people, like, do you like horror? And that's they're like, no. It's a bit of a hard sell. but I will kind of like probe a little bit more because like some of my stuff's more like dark fantasy, and I also have like comedy horror, which is like lighter and stuff. So it's kind of just like, all right, well, these ones aren't for you, but like maybe these ones. So it's like you do again, like kind of obviously the whole point of this is like have to know your audience and stuff and like what you can offer them.
Yeah, that's really good. And I love that you're not necessarily, because you genre blend a lot, but like the genre that will appeal to those people who like read the stuff. I think that's really good piece of advice. Really good. Like get the main genre in your head first before you start dividing it. That's really, really good.
And then you can whittle it down till you appeal to no one.
Yeah,
blend it enough, and then you appeal to no one.
What about you, Alex? Because you write in quite a you write genre fiction. So what is it? How important is it for you, that understanding of genre and how you write and how it affects the readers?
I think it is very important. It's to build really off what Laurie's already said. It's about reader expectation as well. So Laurie's managing the expectation as she points towards a particular book on the stand and things like that. So, knowing what people expect and what they're going to enjoy, like knowing, like you're saying, you've got dark fantasy, so it's going to be a bit heavier on the themes, and it doesn't necessarily creep into horror, but might have similar imagery or vibes, to use the technical term for that. And I think for me as well, it's actually more important, or I've understood it more easily thinking about like the tabletop RPG space, in that Dungeons and Dragons is the popular tabletop RPG, but it runs a very particular kind of game. Like you're super powered, heroes as you run through this Dungeons and Dragons thing. But a lot of people want to use that system to play other kinds of games. Like they want like a dark, brooding, crawling through dungeons, but actually the way that it's set up at it in its bones is to do superpowered, heroes smashing and punching gods in the face. So that kind of horror won't necessarily work as well. And I think that is the same sort of thing that applies to fiction, is that once you've got the genre down, you can kind of know those expectations. So you don't try and sell it as an epic fantasy if actually it's about, yes, there's a huge readership for, a particular genre, for epic fantasy, for romantasy or whatever. But just because you've got, some tiny sort of little thread of subplot for two characters who kind of fancy each other a little bit and then go off and do separate things, that trying to sell it to romantasy readers is going to be a very hard job, and the ones you do manage to sell it to aren't going to enjoy it, so they're not going to give you good reviews. So finding that genre and being clear about what it is important, not only to find readers but also to make sure you find the right readers, because if you sell it wrong then they're just not going to enjoy it. And it's not that you've written a bad book, it's going to be a great book for the right people. So yeah, like Laurie's not going to sell her horror books to, people who's like, well, I really want something really fluffy and unicorns, and you're just something that uplifts me, just on my dark days. You're like, great. Well, I've got ones about like zombie apocalypse, so I can draw a unicorn on the front page, but they're not going to enjoy that. So I think it is very important.
I think Laurie's the kind of person that would behead the unicorn on page 1 and then like have the main character ride around with it.
Oh, no.
So I'll show you. So this is my original Demon Potatoes one, but because of my daughter exists, she asked for a pink cover, and it's glittery. I do these potato stickers where it's just like the one that comes with the demon. Like I have like little demon potato stickers, but she has ones that have like a mertato and a potato corn sticker and a potato fairy. So I have something for everyone. Like fluffy unicorns, I got potato corns.
Let's use Demon Potatoes as a case in study, Laurie, right? Because like, if you'd written Demon Potatoes as your first book ever, and you were like, what genre is this? How do you go about determining like where it fits? Because it's kind of like, it's comedy, but it's dark, but it's also like, yeah, is it for kids? Is it for adults? Is it for teens? It's like, how do you go about figuring that out?
Uh-oh. I'm still figuring that out. I think it's always like something like, so Demon Potatoes is kind of, it's like a unique concept. So again, I find that like, so I haven't done that one at HorrorCon, but people who like horror, like that appeals to them because it's like they have this weird twisted sense of humor that is Demon Potatoes. And so for me, like I understand that, so people could kind of like that. But again, it's not for everyone. And there's also people who like will pick it up and be like, ha ha ha, and then walk away. Like they're like, it's like they appreciate it, but like not enough to like read it or buy it or whatever, like anything like that. So yeah, I don't know. Like I think that like a lot of the stuff, like I'm sure better marketers than me were like, oh yeah, like make sure you like pick an audience and write for them. Like if you really like, I have this one friend who like she writes like romantasy, I guess. And she is writing for a very specific audience. Like she knows her audience and does very well, but like she like basically starts with her audience, whereas like I arguably am starting for just something I think is fun and interesting to me, and then kind of just being like, all right, who is this for? and then because I read it for me around this like women in their 30s. Like, but it's not really like, that's not that simple and stuff. Like just like it's not like I'm like obviously like in a different thing. So like even like it's like my like Demon Potatoes is like this weird like horror, like it is very much for horror people, but then like my comic book Sister Grimm is very much written from a mom's perspective. So it is, you start to like kind of narrow it down a little bit more, because like it's like this, it has like this loss of identity. So kind of like it's looking for this thing that you kind of like connect with people and all that stuff. So it does like narrow it down more. But again, it's not that like people who aren't moms can't enjoy it. But it's just like there's, I think that you almost have like a very specific target audience. They fit in this kind of like spectrum of audience, of readers.
Yeah, I like it. I feel like that kind of resonates, and that will hopefully resonate with a lot of people, because I think depending on the type of book that somebody's written, indie creators, they generally aren't writing mainstream books that are easy to categorize. Indie creators are pushing boundaries in lots of different ways. So it's maybe harder to find a genre like that includes it, we have this like overarching idea of speculative fiction, which is very much in vogue at the moment. Do you think that pitching a book of speculative fiction in the indie space is going to make it more difficult, do you think, to find readers because it covers such a wide variety of things? Or is it better to go super niche and go down the genre, subgenre, subgenre route, you know, when it comes to finding your audience? What do you think, Alex, on that one?
Yeah, I think maybe not like narrowing it down to the molecule, but I do think, yeah, like speculative fiction is a very broad net, and I think if you try and start with that, that doesn't really help anybody. Like the people who are looking at the speculative genre know what they like within the speculative fiction genre, and it's almost like you could put that as a very far away signpost so that immediately it's going to turn off. Like essentially that's just to turn off people who don't like that thing, right? Rather than try and draw in people who do like your kind of whatever you're writing. So I think it can be helpful only in that way. Like, well, not only in that way, but I think that's probably the most useful way it will be helpful, is that it will, people who more read like only literary fiction, and as soon as you add in even like magical realism, like, nope, this is ridiculous, I'm going to put this book in the bin, then you can put like magical, not magical, you can put speculative fiction somewhere and they will immediately turn away, which is more helpful to you than trying to draw them in and kind of obfuscate that more niche genre. Whereas, yeah, then once you've got those readers in, then that more niche genre, like, you know, you say all of our books are speculative fiction, but they're all very different, just even between the three of us here. So somebody who doesn't like fantasy in their speculative fiction and just really likes more sci-fi, they're going to, you know, almost, I think we're almost on a spectrum of how we're set up on the camera here on the video screen, is that they're gonna go Frasier would rather than Alex would. And, you know, somebody who likes horror is going to go more Laurie would than either of us. So I think, yeah, speculative fiction is, I think, only useful as a first step, probably. I think it's going to do more harm than good if you try and use that as the be-all and end-all of your categorization, and using those more niche things is how you find those people who are going to really love it and make sure that you're finding the right readers. Yes, that's my answer.
Yeah, I think that that's wise. And I think that, like, when you're starting out as an indie creative and you've not done any marketing before, and you see like an umbrella that covers everything, you're thinking this will make it really easy for me. But actually it's probably not going to do you favors in the long run. It's a skill that you have to learn, isn't it? To be able to isolate your work and to try and find the people it'll appeal to. Yeah,
well, I think things can go viral, not easily necessarily, but they can go viral on like TikTok or whatever. So it can be, I'm sure it's very tempting to think, oh, well, I'll try and leap on this, whatever it is that's going viral this week. But again, if what's going viral is definitely not really your thing, and then people have picked up the X viral book and then think, oh, okay, well, this author said theirs is quite similar, and then they pick it up and actually it's not very similar, they're going to leave it's going to leave a bad taste in their mouth, or they're going to leave a bad review, when actually it's not a bad book. It just wasn't for them. It just wasn't what they wanted. They wanted goblins, you know, trying to find the right dress for the ball, but actually what you served them was demon potatoes.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it's like if you went in thinking I want something that's like soup potatoes, and then you went, oh, this is about potatoes and this is a comic, yeah, so like let me get demon potatoes, that would be fine. Very different things, aren't they? But like, would you ever be tempted, Laurie, to jump on soup potatoes and be like, if you like soup potatoes, read this book? Like, would you do that? Could you do that tongue in cheek?
There's actually already a children's book called Soup Potato.
Yeah, exactly.
but yeah, I feel like I haven't given them those potatoes too many superpowers. Yeah. So it's more demonic powers.
Yeah.
But I guess that could be helpful in faith, like, oh, did you kind of like soup potatoes, but kind of wish there was more like darkness in it? Then why not try this? So you could use it as a comparison point, highlighting what makes it different, rather than just saying, love this, then also try this.
Yeah. I also think when you're, so again, going to cons and shows and stuff, when you're next to other authors, that you hear their pitches, because there are some people who are very good at it. Like, I think that I'm getting better, but I don't know if I'm necessarily good at it. But like the one guy at the most recent one, he had 2 comic books there, and one was about zombies and one was about superheroes, and people would walk by and he's like, do you like zombies or superheroes more? Even if they were like weren't about to like stop, people like almost always stopped and answered his question. And as soon as they answered a question, he could point them towards one of his comics, Whereas like if someone walked by and was like, do you like speculative fiction? Like who's gonna I think most people are like, what's that? To be fair, like it's not, like telling something that you have speculative fiction isn't gonna like I think of it more as like a book story. Like you go to that section, but like unless you know what anything's about, you're not gonna buy it. So you like need to niche it down a little.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that he's almost, or the person you were talking about there, has kind of picked the not cliches, but tropes, that, or key aspects of a particular niche in the genre. Because I think L.L. McRae, who one of our other lovely Spotlight Indie friends, kind of does the same thing, but like with dragons. Like, do you like dragons? Because there's loads of them in this book, and that's sort of one of the ways she draws people in. So yeah, again, it's about knowing that, as you say, like saying, "Oh, do you like speculative fiction?" You're like, yeah, kind of. I'm just going to go away from you now.
Yeah, please don't talk to me.
Yeah, you draw them in with like, kind of like what they love, rather than anything else.
But it's finding the aspect of your work that is the main aspect. Like, for example, with Demon Potatoes is the perfect example. You wouldn't start by saying, do you like potatoes? You start by saying, do you like demons? Do you like the idea of horror? It's like you've got to know which is what's the main part of your work that has that appeal, and that's going to be the appeal. So that's the step one, is identifying that. And once I think that was really good advice, Laurie, about thinking where it's going to go in a bookstore. Like, which shelf is it going to be on? Because when you then start putting it onto digital bookstores, you're basically putting it onto a shelf. So when you list things on like Amazon or through other digital suppliers, you're going to have to select genres that it fits into and subgenres that it fits into. If you don't know what the genres are and subgenres, you're going to be putting on the wrong shelf. It's going to be harder for people to find. Have you guys had experience with that, of like listing books and making sure that they're reaching the right people as you're listing them and making them available online?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
So what's been your general experience of that? Is that a process that you found easy? Is that a process that you've had to learn things about, or to get good at? Is it a skill to learn, do you think?
I think it is a skill to us. Like, just thinking of Amazon, it's the biggest marketplace. I think from what I know of it at the moment, I mean, it could change at any given moment, but I think you can add like 3 categories to your book when you're setting it up. Like, specifically, you can check a box and say this is X. But what else you can do is add your keywords as a separate field, say, so that kind of to try and catch what people are searching for, and that can also put it into other categories. So you don't necessarily, like for mine, I don't think I've clicked necessarily like Norse fantasy or Norse myths and legends for like one of my categories, but it is in that category within Amazon because that's part of my keywords and stuff like that. So I think with those categories that you select, you want to go as niche as you can, while still being true to what you want, and then use those keywords to kind of niche it down a little bit more. And then I think the balance is trying to find what you believe it is and think versus what a reader is going to believe and think that the book is. Like, my settings are Norse inspired, but they're not actually like historical Scandinavia. They're a fantasy setting, so I'm always on the Scandinavian fiction or something in there, because I just think that's going to draw in the wrong crowd, but it also gives a very shorthand of what this book is going to be like. So I think you have to balance that, and I'm sure there's like millions of resources out there of what's the best way to try and do that, because it's a topic I'm sure you could just go ever on, and the algorithms are always changing.
Yeah, that's true. What about you, Laurie? What have you learned about sort of listing your books?
I think Alex has some good points. It is still balancing that niche versus that like commercial aspect, because it's like you can have like Scandinavian fantasy, but again, where it's just like most people, I don't know, maybe more people than I think, but I would say a lot of people aren't typing in the word Scandinavian when they're looking for fantasies. They're just probably typing in fantasy. So you kind of have to make sure you have like all those keywords in there. I know in like the novel world, I think a lot of the big publishers are starting to do it, where it's like as much as people don't like coming up with comps and you want to believe that your book is completely original and stuff, it is useful to know like where your book fits compared to other stories. And so like, say someone is looking, like say you think your book is like people of like fans of Brandon Sanderson or something would like your book. I've seen like big publishers, like their keywords start to be like, it's not a Brandon Sanderson book, you put Brandon Sanderson as your keyword, or his titles, so like when people type in his name, your book pops up. Like it kind of feels a bit like a cheat, but it's like you have to know like there's value in knowing like fans of this will like my book. And so like I don't know how I don't remember how many keywords and stuff you can. I don't use Amazon a ton anymore, but there is value in like kind of using other people to find your book.
Yeah, totally. Like I would love for people to be writing, this is like Laurie Cunningham and that kind of thing, if they've written like a 1-page poetry book, because that's like it's like because Laurie's like yeah, Amazon, that was like the death of Amazon for you, when it Laurie was like, this is not a poem. It was...
That book is the second one I wrote is still up there.
Yeah.
Since they wouldn't let me have the first one.
Yeah.
The second one's sticking it to Amazon is still up there.
But that's a really good example of something which is not, you wouldn't pitch it as poetry, you'd pitch it as comedy, because it is just hilarious and it's amazing, and you read it and you think, yeah, that gave me a really good laugh and really good feeling about myself. Yeah. But like it's not, it's, if you've got people who collect like poetry collections, they're probably gonna read it and be like, could have done with a few more poems, you know. So it's you've got to know where it fits and who it's for. And I think that this is where you've got to learn to think like a reader, because that's what genre is for. Genre is for the readers, not for the writers. These listings are for the readers, not for the writers. So you've got to learn, I think, especially, it's hard to do when it's your first book, but you've got to learn to step away from the writing side of it. And you've got to say, if I'm a reader, what do I need? What would I need to find this book? And start from there. And then you'll be able to know how to list it, what to do. So if you need tips on finding comparison authors, you can go look at a previous No Such Thing as a Stupid Question, where we talk about comp titles, and you'll be able to get loads of tips and advice as to how you can go about doing that. The other thing that I was going to ask you guys about is, once it is listed and once it is out there and once you've said this book is this, things change within the industry, and you know, different tropes become popular and everything like that. Do you just put it out there and leave it, or do you think that it's like a fluid thing that can change over time? So like as genres change and subgenres are altered by what's being feeding into them, is it something that's good to go back and review, or would you just say, just put it out there, move on to the next one? What's your take on that?
Go on, Laurie.
I think that, so this isn't supposed to be a cop out of a thing, but it's just like there's such a thing as going back too much and like overthinking it and changing it too much, where you're like, oh, like what if I change this word? Because you can like I said, like I'm always trying to crack some magical code that doesn't exist to try and like sell my books to as many people as possible. But like at the same time, there is a magical code that does exist. so it does make sense. And like as things evolve, it's just like, it's like, even like I hadn't heard of the term romantasy. I think that's like I want to say fairly newish, but I'm also might just have had my head under a rock forever and it's existed forever. But it seems like it became more mainstream. So if you used to like have your book like keyworded as romance and fantasy, it would make sense to go back in there and keyword it as romantasy. Like, so, and if you don't do that, you're likely missing out on a number of people searching for romantasy. So 100%, I'd say like go back in there and change really obvious things. And I also think the more that you like try and pitch and sell your book, the more you're like it's not like your book changes or the genre changes, but like kind of like your perspective of where your book fits in with everything might change a little bit. So how you want to sell it might change. So like I think it's worth going back in like once in a while and kind of giving it a read and being like, is there anything worth changing? Because it's like, what kind of, like, I know with like a lot of people read books for escapism and stuff, but it's kind of like, what need is your book meeting, kind of, so that you can kind of encourage people to buy it. And the more you understand, I find that like the more you try and sell your book, the more you start to understand it better and like who wants your book. So then I think you can tweak your pitch and your blurb and all your keywords as needed.
Yeah, that's good advice. What about you, Alex?
Yeah, I think, we'll agree with that, really, that constantly tweaking stuff is sort of the way that madness lies, that you're going to be sort of checking your sales rankings after every sort of word. Well, no, I took a comma out and that's not going to put it back in. But, like checking those keywords and things is probably the thing that you might want to look at every, I don't know, like every, whatever time scale feels appropriate to you that isn't every day, every week, like maybe just once every couple of months or something, to, as you say, like Laurie, like if you have previously used romance and fantasy, but now romance is really kicking off as a trending term, then that's going to be very useful to you. And I feel like it's probably more that back end stuff, like the keywords in the sort of maybe categories at Amazon, that is going to be the stuff you want to tweak more than, hopefully you've got like a really good blurb or synopsis or whatever on that's drawing people in, and that kind of storytelling technique to draw people in like that isn't going to need to change very much beyond the fact that you will know better like in 6 months, and that doesn't need to be tweaked every 5 minutes. Being cautious with how much you're changing it, because equally if you keep changing it and going back and back and back without letting it settle and sit, you're not going to know what's worked. Like, well, actually I changed it 6 times this week and it's really shot up the whole week, but I don't know which version, and now it's like falling, but I don't know what I did to change it that actually made the difference.
Yeah. And I think as well, like, not jumping on things that are new unless you actually have written a romantasy book. So like if you've written a book that has like a slight bit of romance and a slight bit of fantasy, but it's mainly a grimdark political thriller, then you don't want to be listing it as romantasy, right? Just because it's in vogue. So as things change and as things do become fluid, stay true to the heart of the book, but then use these, like the word cozy has almost become like, it's so synonymous now with so many things, but like it never used to be. Before Legends and Lattes, the word cozy you used to think of as like old like mystery sort of like, like harmless mystery books, and now it's like it's this whole thing in itself, like the cozy genre. It's like but it's so yeah, you've got to be aware of stuff as it changes, but just don't do your book a disservice by pitching it as something it's not.
Well, that's kind of thing. Like, you can trick a lot of people into reading your book, but once, like what we were saying before, like people won't like it. Is the problem. Like if they're expecting one thing, and I know that's also a thing with covers. Like, there's a lot of cover styles that are very in trend as well. And if you like pick a certain trend, where it's just like, hey, like I think there's some do I want to go into specifics? But it's just like there's some book that was recently, like I think you got a lot of controversy because it was kind of like looking like this like cutesy little romance book, but it was like actually like was more like domestic abuse or something like that. Where it's just like, yeah, that's not quite the like romance happily ever after story that you're pitching it as.
Yeah, we can imagine if Babies with Rabies had the cover of like almost like what a diaper sort of company has with this cute little baby at the front, sort of like that would be
so Babies with Rabies is also tricky because a lot of people think it might be a children's book until they start to read it. Yeah. And I know I've seen reviews for like Go the F to Sleep where like people are like, oh my God, I started reading this to my children. Again, it's just like you can do your best to like be very blatant and transparent about what your genre is, but like some people still are just gonna pick it up and be like, I hate this. It's just like, well, it's like, do you read this kind of stuff? No, but I hate it.
Yeah, it's so I think like the main bits of advice that we've kind of like touched on this is when if you've written your first book and you're thinking, how am I going to list it? How am I going to sell it? The things to remember are identify your genre by the main thing that the book is, and then don't opt for just a cop-out blanket all, because it's not going to do you any favors. Be as specific as you can. Use the keywords and use the functions that are there. Stay on top of the industry and adjust accordingly, but don't go too far into it. And just rely on the fact that the readers are out there and they're looking for books like yours. So think like a reader and what they would need to find it. I think those are like the main points, right, that we've covered. Everybody, does that pretty much cover it?
And I think, I think that when you said it earlier, and you touched on it again there, but I think that the thinking about it as a reader and trying to come at it as a reader would try and find your book is a really good idea, because you were going to be so close to it, want to present it in a certain way potentially because you're the author and you want it to, feel the way that you did when you wrote it. But taking that step back and thinking about it from the reader's perspective is actually a really good idea, because then you'll think, well, actually, I want it to be like X book, and that might help inform some of these other decisions about genre.
Yeah. So. And I think as well, like what Laurie said about going into a bookshop, we've all had that experience where we're looking for a certain book in a bookshop and we're in a rush. So you go in and you look for the thing, you look for the category, then you go there and you look down the list. But like, you don't just start at one end of the bookshop and go around. You zone in on the category, don't you? It's like, if I'm looking for a classic, I'll go to classics. If I'm looking for a brand new book out that's a sci-fi book, I'll go to the sci-fi section. Like, you've got to know where your book fits in that. Otherwise, you're just doing your book a disservice, right? So yeah, think like you're a reader in a bookshop in a hurry, and then you'll know what to do. Thank you so much for joining us and for helping us answer that question, Laurie. It's been such a delight to have you this past few weeks. Where can people find out more about you and about your writing and about ASAP Imagination?
For my personal website is lacunningham.com. The ASAP website, where most of my books are, is asapimagination.com. And arguably the easiest way to find me on social media is to find ASAP Imagination, because my handle changes on all of them. ASAP Imagination is consistent across all of them, and I'm usually tagged in a lot of posts. So
awesome. And Alex, what about you?
Alex S. Bradshaw and all the socials. Hopefully I've tried to be a bit more consistent with what I've been doing. So X, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and stuff, and then alexsbradshaw.com as well.
Amazing. And spotlightindie.co.uk is where you'll find everything Spotlight Indie. You'll also find it here on YouTube. So like and subscribe to the Spotlight Indie YouTube channel. And we will see you all again for the next round of videos. But Laurie, thank you so much for joining us and for being with us. It's been such a pleasure.
Real treat. Thank you so much.
Man, who knew the circus music had such dark origins?